Welcome to Super Shuffle. We start a brand new series titled Fireside Chats with Dan and Ken. Dan and I will talk about a variety of issues happening in our lives, in the world, and whatever interests us, we're going to be sitting beside this beautiful fireside chatting about it. Today we start off talking about motorcycles. Dan's first motorcycle, a Puke. It's an Austrian bike. Let's get right to the interview. Okay. So, welcome to this edition of Super Shuffle. And as I promised, we are going to be doing a bunch of series on Fireside Chats with Dan. And this morning, to kick off our show, we've also got Peter along, who hopefully has agreed to be part of our show here on Super Shuffle. But you remember a few years ago, I had Dan on our radio show, and we're talking about our love of motorcycles. And of course, for me, I have more fun on two wheels than I do on four. And I found out you did too. We both grew up, well, all three of us originally have spent a number of years in London, Ontario, in various capacities. Peter, did you teach in London, Ontario?
No. I was there as a child.
As a
between
child.
age 11 and 14.
And then
That's
you
all.
moved to Michigan.
Yes.
All right. Dan,
Yeah.
you had a motorcycle in Ontario?
No, I used to ride in the back of a buddy's Triumph. I loved that. Loved that thing. Triumph. Forget what it was.
750.
Or BSA. He had a BSA, and then he had a Triumph. For the BSA, I loved the BSA.
Gorgeous
Yeah.
bikes.
Oh yeah.
A lot of new
Yeah.
designs are still fashioned after with a retro look toward the
Really.
BSAs and the Nortons. And
Yeah,
some
Norton.
of
Yeah,
those.
love those.
While we're recording this weekend, it's the motorcycle show at TradeX in Abbotsford.
Oh really?
Yeah,
Oh cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking about going.
I'll give you a quick story on the BSA. I was on the back of my buddy's BSA at that time. And you'll remember, and Peter will, that Hamilton Road, as you used to go towards Dorchester, you'd go down this hill and it would curve over this bridge, across the Thames, and then come back up. And we decided that, me being on the back, I could look at the speedometer a lot easier than he could, because we were going to navigate those curves and the bridge as fast as we could. And I'm looking over his shoulder, and we get to the other side. It said 90 miles an hour at that time. 90 miles an hour, just about on its side. And then, like stupid kids, right? You know, it could have hit that bridge. Oh, yeah.
So in Canadian terms, that's what, about 150 kilometers an hour?
Yeah, I don't know.
least.
Yeah,
160 is 100 miles an hour.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm not good at the math. With
yeah.
seconds.
Well, it was miles an hour.
So who owned that bike?
Bill Grunewald. He ultimately became a pilot, commercial pilot.
Wow.
And yeah, that was a cool bike. I love that bike.
So you were really good at telling the story on the air, on radio, about your first motorcycle, and I've listened to the interview, and we'll play it right after we do this live portion with Dan and Peter, and recall what you said on the show about your. I called it a Puke. You corrected me and said it's a Puke.
Puke. That's right. It's a Puke.
You know,
P-U-C-H. Yeah.
P-U-C-H?
Yeah. Puke.
Sounds like a German
How would
word.
you? Yeah. Oh, could
Austrian,
be.
German?
I thought it was Austrian, or
Yeah.
but it could be. Yeah,
Yeah.
around there.
So where'd you find that bike?
You know, I don't even remember. It was out here in Burnaby, because that's where I owned it. Can't remember how I got it. I remember taking my motorcycle license on it, and that was in Burnaby also. I lived in New West, but went to the license bureau then, and they would just stand in the parking lot and watch you go up this hill and turn around and come back and then apply the brakes and stuff like that. And as I'm going to my appointment, just around the corner, I hit this curb, and it knocked the oil plug out. Yeah,
Oh,
so I'm
boy.
dripping oil, thinking, oh no, how am I gonna? Now I can't recall exactly what happened, but I passed the test. I thought, oh, just and drove away from there. Got the plug fixed or something like that. But
Do you remember
yeah,
what year that was?
oh, it's got to be 70. 70, 71.
See, a lot of the old motorcycles leaked oil back then, so it probably wouldn't have been too big of a surprise or a shock.
Right.
The old joke going around at that time was if you had a Harley, you walked up to the Harley owner and you say, is your motorcycle out of oil? And they go, no, it's full of oil. Oh, I don't see any leaks.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's about it.
So you took your test with with
With the
a
Puke.
with a
With
Puke.
leaky oil Puke. Yeah. Yeah.
So
that
what
was-
attracted you to that bike?
I think it was probably just the price or something like that. I didn't know first thing about bikes necessarily, other than Harleys or that BSA and that, but it's probably price. I was just a young kid. And I worked in just a couple of things I remember about that. I worked in Vancouver, right off of Terminal Ave, underneath the Georgia Viaduct, and every morning I would take this thing into Vancouver, rain or shine. I remember I had a helmet that had a visor on it that at one point the visor, there's so many vibrations on that, but the little snaps on the visor kept loosening, right, or breaking, and one time it was slapping me in the face, so I just ripped the visor off, but now it's pouring rain, and I used to go down the freeway like this, it hurt, right?
Oh yeah.
And one time I'm going to work towards Vancouver, and my back end was swiveling. I thought, oh, I've got a flat tire in the back, and I looked down to my left, no flat tire. I thought, well, that's weird. What's happening here? I looked to my right. Well, the pin that holds the whole suspension on, so you got your shocks, you got the two, I don't know what they call them, struts or something like that.
Yeah.
But the whole pin was, it left that particular mount, and it was almost out of this one, and the whole back end is swinging like this. I don't know what would have happened had I lost it.
I do.
But yeah, right, yeah. My face wouldn't be quite the way.
You wish you'd have had that screen on your helmet.
I wouldn't be as handsome as I am. Anyway, and you don't just stop. I just feathered it down, and I stuck my foot out, pushing this pin in as far as I could. And sure enough, I got it back enough to navigate to Vancouver, and then I don't know what I did, but I got it fixed. But that was a scary moment.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that the only vehicle you had at the time? Was a motorcycle?
Yeah. And I remember taking the baffles out. We lived in off of Caribou Road, and I would have to go up this gravel driveway out of my brother-in-law and sister's place.
Right.
That's where I stayed at that time. And up this gravel driveway onto Armstrong, I think it was. And the fella next door, older guy, talked to my brother-in-law. He says, listen, I went through like World War II, and he says, every time that motorbike fires up, he says, I think we're being attacked. Well, because I took the baffles out of the exhaust, thinking, oh, cool, it's a little louder, a little whatever, not knowing that adds to your power. You got to have back pressure or something like that. I just had these baffles out, and I'd fire it up and try to navigate out of this gravel driveway.
Well, they sounded better. I remember my first motorcycle was the 1966 Yamaha Twin 100.
Oh, cool.
And a lot of the guys that had little Honda 90s or 110 were doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Taking the baffles out, and they sounded a little crispier.
Meteor. Yeah.
That was a very common thing.
Yeah.
But,
actually, this was very
against the
similar to
law.
a Honda. I think you referred that Puke was very similar to that Honda.
How many cc was your bike?
I can't remember. That was 90, I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so very close.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Yamaha was a Twin 100.
Yeah.
Twin was two carburetors, twin jet.
Oh, okay.
It's two carburetors, two cylinders.
Right.
And a friend of mine, Larry, and I, we both bought ours together in London.
Okay.
And I was working for a farmer at 90 cents an hour, and it took me all summer to save up for this bike. And it was $450.
Yeah.
I bought a blue one, Larry bought a red one. And we'd go whipping up and down Ipperwash
All right. Sure.
before the First Nations shut it down. Remember, do you guys ever remember cars going on the
Oh, yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. We used to drive
it
there.
was fabulous motorcycle
Yeah,
riding
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
You could go from one end almost up to the pier by Grand Dent, where there's that
Wow.
water. Was
Yeah.
But Larry and I would spend hours there, getting stuck in the sand dunes trying to go up.
Yeah.
It was fun, but
Cool.
taking baffles out reminds me of those early '60s.
Yeah.
A lot of kids did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. That was
So was yours a twin?
no.
Single cylinder?
You know, I can't even remember, Ken.
I'm gonna
I-
put a picture up on.
Put a picture up and find-
Well,
yeah,
as we're talking,
I'm
I'll
trying
put
to
a picture
think.
of the Puke because I've got
Yeah.
some that I did.
Don't
some
say
recent-
puke. You
Oh,
said
sorry.
puke again. Yeah.
Practice.
Yeah.
It's a good Dutch sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably heard your folks use that sound.
Well,
Yeah.
try saying it on the radio. It doesn't work well in English.
No,
Yeah,
no,
you're
I wouldn't.
whatever. There we go. So
Yeah.
I think the one that I've got a picture of, it is a single cylinder.
Yeah.
Brother Robert had a 250 Ducati.
Oh, wow.
It had a compression release on it, so when you
Really?
kick-started it, you couldn't
Really?
kickstart it without taking the compression off the,
Wow.
off the cylinder.
Yeah.
There was no way. His weight, I tried it several, you couldn't. But the minute he hit that little lever on the handlebar,
Interesting.
he could fire it up and then he'd let go and the thing ran like
Yeah.
that. But power out of that
I'll
250
bet.
was wicked.
Ducati, that's made by what?
Italian.
Yeah.
Italian
It's
bike. They're still around.
yeah. Oh,
Beautiful
yeah.
bikes, race bikes
Yeah.
and stuff. But anyhow, how long did you own yours then?
I'm thinking about three or 4 years,
Somewhere in there.
something like that. Yeah.
Have you ever owned another bike since that one?
No, no.
So you sold the motorcycle.
I sold the motorcycle, I guess. I don't know. I
and
moved
you don't
back
have a
to.
motorcycle license.
Oh yeah, no, I did because
No,
remember
no,
the
now.
oil plug? Yeah, no,
Yeah,
now.
now.
No, so it didn't run with. Well, I moved to Ontario in '72, so I came out here in '69. Probably in the '70s, '71, I had the motorcycle. And you remember Harry Buys? That's
Yes.
my brother-in-law.
Yes.
He used to like riding it, and one time he took it out on a Sunday afternoon and dropped it and ripped his Sunday pants.
I want to make you
He's
cry.
wearing his side pants, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why I never get on a borrowed bike.
Right? No.
I've never dropped a bike in all the years.
Well, yeah.
And I kind of cringe when someone asks, "Hey, can I try out your Gold Wing?" And they've
Yeah.
never been on a bike that big,
Right.
and I think, "Oh,
Yeah.
oh."
No.
And I look for every excuse in the world.
Yeah.
If you're interested in a motorcycle, go for a test ride at the
At
the
dealership.
dealership.
Yeah,
Like
right.
them, 'cause
Yeah.
they're-
Exactly.
But when somebody drops your bike and leaves
No, I know.
scratches on it, it hurts.
And yeah, actually every night on the way home, I'd take the freeway home from the Georgia Viaduct, and I'd go up Caribou Road, so get off of that at Caribou or whatever the exit is there, and then that was all bush coming up to our place, and I'd take the bush, I'd take the trail all the way up, and it was just a narrow little trail, but I'd wind this thing right out. It was a heavy bike, and I'd be doing jumps and stuff like that. And one time, speaking of borrowed bikes, I meet a kid with a trail bike on the trail, and he's looking at me like, "Are you serious? Like you're driving that down the trail?" Yeah, it's great. Hugs the trail. It's nice. He says, "You want to trade?" I said, "Sure. I've never ridden that trail bike." So I grab his trail bike, and I'm doing the same speeds and everything. I know the trail. And there was this one area where it went up a rise and then it turned to the right and whatever. And I go up this rise. I am airborne.
Oh boy.
I'm heading into the bush. I just missed a tree and landed on that, and that was it. I parked it, waited for him to come around. I said, "Here's your bike," because it was so much lighter than mine
Yeah.
that it's like riding a feather.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Yeah, the heavy bikes are great on the road. Not so
Yeah.
much on the narrow trails
No.
and everything. But his kind of if he had a trail bike,
Yeah.
that's what they're designed to do. And if you like that kind of riding, it's a totally different style of riding.
Exactly.
Rather than you were just cruising the trails.
Well, I was smoking it, but it was heavy enough that I knew exactly,
Yeah.
how fast I could go around these things and
Yeah,
stuff like
me
that. His, I did. It was just the weight.
Wow.
I did the same speed and I'd be flying. So.
So Peter, you've never owned a motorcycle?
Never.
Being-
I was just sitting here thinking, I've never been on a motorcycle.
Never been on a
It's
bike?
pretty bad, eh?
Yeah.
No.
That's terrible. That you say.
Yeah. No, it's not.
I know
No, no.
nothing about
No.
motorcycles.
No, it's not.
No experience.
It's not terrible. Eileen, my wife, is a great passenger. She has no desire to
Right.
get her license at all.
No.
And I keep telling her, motorcycles are really meant for one-up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you like riding, then you have to get the license, and you've got to get your own bike.
Right.
And that's that freedom that comes with moving your soul and spirit on two wheels
Yeah.
is different on your own bike than being a passenger.
So
Yeah.
speaking of two wheels, I started riding a bike again when I was a kid. Again, London, Ontario. Before that, we couldn't afford a bike, and I got my paper route. So that's where I learned how to ride a bike. And I've been riding a bike ever since, and I just recently graduated to an electric
Oh
bike.
yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah. You were Goldwing all the time. You loved the Goldwings.
Goldwing,
eh?
the ST1300.
Yeah.
The its nickname is the Connie 1400. It's Kawasaki's Concourse. It's
Oh.
a sport touring bike.
Okay. Wow.
That's my number one.
I
But I
like.
love the Goldwing.
Yeah.
Well, Eileen and I took our Goldwing to Sturgis.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, interesting.
We were on the road for 3 weeks. She was back there, and
Wow.
that year,
Sturgis, Wyoming?
Sturgis, South
Yeah.
Dakota.
South Dakota.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just when you get into
Where the big
Motorcycle. Yeah,
motorcycle.
motorcycle.
So during
We've
the
been there during the festival. We weren't part of it. We were there with a tent trailer.
RV.
Yeah,
No, that's a great spot to RV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's great. It
Before we had our
attracts a lot of enthusiasts
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
all over.
Yeah.
The year we were there were 750,000
yeah.
attendants.
Is that right?
Oh,
Yeah,
we had
that
a
place was
blast.
crazy. Yeah.
Riding
I
the
remember that.
Black Hills,
Yeah.
Mount Rushmore.
Yeah. Right.
What's I forgot the name of the one now where they've got a
Is it Deadwood, the little
that
town?
hotel.
Yeah.
That little town Deadwood.
Um,
Crazy Horse.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, where the
Custer's Last Stand.
well, we visited that too. That was on the way down. We
Yeah,
visited
that's
Custer's.
before Sturgis. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but Crazy Horse
Oh, okay.
is where they're carving an American native on a horse. The head of the horse is carved into the mountain, and the rider is pointing his finger.
Oh, no kidding.
And we heard the story. The reason they're carving it is they're pointing the finger, blaming the U.S. government and the military at that time for moving natives off the
Yeah.
reserves.
Interesting.
That whole issue
Right.
with
Yeah.
Custer's Last
Yes,
Stand.
that's
Wow.
There's a
preceded
message there that they're
yeah.
Yeah.
trying to get across with that there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't think you'll ever ride again, Dan, on a motorcycle?
Probably not. Getting up to right. Yeah. And you heard my wife. Edit that in there.
Yeah, I'll try.
Yeah.
So, any last memories before we listen to the radio show, the interview with you?
Yeah,
no. Questions or something?
Just no. I had
about
one. I had one other experience, and it was like I said. The vibration on this thing was probably worse. I don't know whether it was worse than the Harley. I know the Harleys. I've ridden a few of those, and they're, But coming back home one time, I get back to, and I noticed where the bracket for the license plate was. Again, it's just kind of a little crack, metal fatigue, whatever it was. I get home, there's a hole in my fender, and no license plate. Yes.
It is round
I'm
off.
thinking, yeah, it's just. So I don't know what prompted me to, but I went back down the freeway, turned around at Wellington or something, and I just went along the side. I found it in the ditch. I found my license plate in the ditch, and had it welded back up, and
Isn't that fun?
weird
amazing
stuff,
that you
eh?
found it.
Isn't that
Just
fun?
weird, yeah. No, it was a fun bike, and yeah, I used to be able to do wheelies on it.
Sit back far enough that you could.
Get back far, and one time I had a fellow, Harry Castelline. I don't know if you remember the name, but he and I were coming back from Shakey's Pizza, had a few beers in us. Harry's on the back, and I end up beside a car with a bunch of bunch of girls in it, and I said, hey, you know, we're playing the big shot and stuff like that. Light turns green, and I put it up in the air. I've never had it so high. I thought, I'm going over. Like, this is how, you know. Well, I forgot Harry was on the back.
Whoa,
so that's what,
no.
you know, easy enough to lift it up, right? And so I finally put it down. I look back, and Harry's basically still hanging on to me. He'd had a few beers, so it's like he's laying on the road. And yeah, so
Showing off.
don't write. Yeah.
So, well, listen.
Yeah, that was
Dan,
great.
Peter, thank you very much for
Thanks,
being on this edition of Super Shuffle. And now we're going to look at some of the early photos of a Puke that I found, and we'll listen to the radio interview of Dan and I on CL Radio back in about I don't know. I'll find the year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Good.
Thanks.
Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, Rob.
My special guest this morning, our special guest, is Dan Vanderhoek. And if you'll recall, a few weeks ago, we read a letter that Dan had sent us here at Cruise Control, Vancouver's only motorcycle radio show, regarding his motorcycle experience. And I read the letter on air. I referred to it as a puke, but that's not the correct name. But it looks like you say puke instead of...
Rob, yeah, I'm really glad to be on the show to correct this and put the name of my motorcycle, my first love, to the straights. It's actually, you have to use it because it was an Austrian bike. You do have to use that kind of guttural throat clearing in this thing, and it's actually pronounced Puke. But as soon as I heard that, I thought, how do you pronounce that again? And you had me going. I was going Puke, but it is Puke. Thank you very much.
So you have to have a bit of a European accent in order to say the name correctly. Who is Dan Vanderhoek, by the way?
Dan Vanderhoek. I'm a local realtor in Langley, British Columbia. Married to a beautiful gal, Cindy. And she is also a licensed realtor. We practice together out of Royal LePage.
Well, that's not your original place of birth, Vancouver, because when I first met you, you were about 8 years old. I was about 9. Am I a year older than you, or what year were you born?
Of course, you're a year older. It's like, just check out the hair, Rob. Actually, yeah, I was born in 1950, and we did know each other way back when. I think we were in a boys' club together. Out in London, Ontario. We often talk about that, and we used to go up to Ilderton just to bug guys like you.
I'm still picking straw out of my nose from that time we went camping. This is a true story, by the way. We were camping with this boys' club, and what got into you to stuff my sleeping bag full of straw?
I don't think I was the instigator of that. I certainly joined in. Well, perhaps I was. But we just thought it would be a gag. We were in this longhouse, as you recall, in the wintertime. And we thought we'd stuff some straw down your sleeping bag. And I recall you and your brother, that was it. You were going to leave the camp. Both of you were walking down the road, the counselors chasing you.
Well, it was Friday night. I had no place to sleep that was comfortable. I always thought that was an old chicken coop that they had us in.
It probably was. We called it the longhouse, but it was a chicken coop. I got caught in kangaroo court for that. You may not recall that, but yeah, we had to make pancakes the next morning. Thank you.
Anyhow, growing up in London, I was 15 when I got my first motorcycle. Now, you may not have seen it because you were off doing other things. And my first bike was a Yamaha Twin Jet 100. Did you have a motorcycle in London, or was it here when you came to Vancouver that was your experience with a bike?
Yeah, actually, it was Vancouver. I had a buddy in London that had a BSA, and enjoyed riding on that with him. It was when I came out to British Columbia when I was 19 years old, so 1969. I can't even recall. Well, check the hair again; it's gray. I can't recall how I got this. I know I bought it. I was looking for one, and don't know what I paid for it. I thought it was around $250, but I'm not sure. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. That was my first bike, and I had no idea, what a Puke was. It was a good looking motorcycle.
Just remind us again how big it was.
It was a 250cc, 4-stroke, So I didn't have to mix any gas and oil. I recall actually when I got my motorcycle license, I don't know whether you had a learner's permit at that time, but you had to drive your motorcycle into Vancouver to the license bureau. And I was just finding the place, pulled out of a gas station. It was right around the corner, and I actually knocked the oil plug off of the bike, and I stuffed it full of. I lost a bit of oil, stuffed it full of paper towel, and hopefully, it didn't dry up during the licensing procedure. They would stand in the backyard, in the back lot, actually, and have you drive up and down the road. They could see you and drive up this hill, stop on the hill, turn around, and go through some pylons and things like that. They didn't even go with you. They just observed from a quarter of a mile away or something. So.
Our special guest this morning is Dan Vanderhoek. Dan wrote us a letter a few weeks ago about his first motorcycle, and we wanted to give Dan the opportunity to talk to you during this interview about that bike. And this is Cruise Control here on AM 650, Vancouver's only motorcycle radio show. Now, that was a street bike, but you used it off-road as well.
I sure did. Caribou Trail, Caribou Road. I lived just on the top of Caribou Road on Armstrong. And so every day coming home from Vancouver, I couldn't do it in the morning, of course, but coming home, I would go up Caribou Road hill, and there were trails coming off of this. So it was all bush in those days, 1969. And man, I got to know these trails. This was my trail bike, but heavy, and I would get air after a period of time and really smoke down these trails. People walking along just could not believe I had this bike on the trail.
Were you working in Vancouver and living in Burnaby at the time?
I was, exactly. And I worked actually under the Georgia Viaduct and at, I don't know if I can say this, but Hudson's Bay Wholesale. I was in the confection section, as they say, filling orders.
Well, you weren't selling men's underwear like my other friend Larry. He was selling men's underwear at Sears in London, and I had no idea that you worked at the Bay Confectionery, it was called.
Well, it was the wholesale division. So we had salespeople go out to sell to variety stores and convenience stores, the confectionery, tobacco and sundries.
Well, let's get back to the off-road experience. Nice street bike. You sent me a picture of the bike, and if you have not seen a bike, if you can envision in your mind a Honda, about an early 70s Honda style, either a 305 or a 350, that's very similar to what I've seen from the photo of what the Puke looks like.
Right. Yeah. It was a good knuckling bike. So yeah, on the trails now. In the letter, I don't know if folks read that or and I'd advise anybody get on your website. It's a great website and a great show. I don't get up early on Saturday mornings, thank you very much, but I do know that the show is. I've listened to the show, downloaded a few days later, and I really enjoy the show. But I met a guy, a fella young guy on the trail, and he had a 125 Yamaha or whatever he had. It was an authentic trail bike, and we talked for a bit. He couldn't believe I was out there, and he said, "Let me try this thing," and I said, "Sure, let me try yours." And away we went. 1 up, 5 down. I don't know what it was, but I took off on this thing. Well, the weight of mine was twice his little 125. So knowing the trail really well, I took it at the same speed as what I would take my own bike. And I got some air. I had a corner right after that. His bike and me ended up, I'm glad I didn't hit a tree, but that's where we ended up, in the bush. And my last time on a trail bike, thank you.
Did you ever see that guy again?
No, I don't think he wanted to see me again. I picked up his bike and waited for the sound of mine coming back. I said, "Thank you very much. Here's your bike."
Oh, he didn't even realize you'd wiped out.
No. I did tell him that this is so light. I can't run this thing. It was a totally different experience.
So how long did you have a motorcycle?
I think I had it about a year and a half, something like that. And drove it every day into Vancouver, rain or shine, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Now, you're not riding a bike now, are you?
No, I'm not, and I would love to get back into it. got the better half, of course, kind of leery of that. But I think if I got her a bike also, then, she would probably enjoy that.
Well, listen, you mentioned you've been listening to the show. We're huge supporters of riding schools, and someone your age and your background, that you've got some experience in a motorcycle, wouldn't find it very hard to get back into the seat and the comfort and the joy and the fun on the two wheels, as most of us have. But in any event, now you also hung around with a bunch of rock and rollers in those days. Can we just briefly talk about those guys? Who were they? They were I know who they were, but I want you to tell us who they were.
Right. Well, my brother-in-law was Ron Tabak, the lead singer for Prism for Christmas, and the Rocket Norton and Lindsay Mitchell, all those guys. He made quite a career out of that, and proud of him.
Did any of those guys ride a bike? Do you recall, Dan?
I think Ron did. I mean, I didn't know the other guys, but their personal lives as much. But I think Ron did at one particular point. He actually moved to London before he got into the radio or into the recording business, and I had a framing business, a carpentry business out there, and he worked for me for a couple of summers, and he was looking for a career in rock, and he made it.
So what years would those have been? Prism would have been around in the 70s, the early 70s. Were they the tail end of the 60s at all, or Prism in the very early 70s?
No, actually it was the later 70s, I think, that they, I recall hearing, because I still lived in Ontario. Actually, I came out here in 69, moved back in 72, and it was about 76, I think, 77, that I heard the first song on the radio, Spaceship Superstar. And I recall being in Mushroom Studios with him at one time, watching him record, a few of the songs. So I had some demos of that. And it was a real thrill.
Well, the reason I ask is some of the early Canadian rock idols, as we would call them today, that had made the music scene what it is for Canadian artists, were also big fans of cruisers. And but not every band, they were traveling and busy and probably didn't have a lot of time to get on a motorcycle. But you had sold your bike by that point?
Yes, I had, and moved back to Ontario. I actually, an interesting story, you'll like this, being a radio personality, I called in to get, I wanted airplay on Spaceship Superstar, and I would call into the radio station every night and say, could you play Spaceship Superstar by Prism? And one night he said, you called last night, didn't you? And I thought, oh no, I'm in trouble. And the DJ actually said, well, hey, why don't I give you a couple of free tickets to Trooper? They're coming into town, into London. And so just when you get back on the air, sound really excited and say, wow, thank you very much. I said, okay, great. So I actually went to the Trooper concert, and it was great.
This is Cruise Control, Vancouver's motorcycle radio show, right here on AM 650. Our special guest this morning is Dan Vanderhoek. We've blended a little bit of his background with his short experience on a motorcycle, and I'm so delighted that you've taken some time out this morning to share with us that wonderful story on your first bike. And I hope that one day the passion and the desire to get back on two wheels hit you again.
Well, I think the desire's there. It's just trying to get the wife convinced and round up some money. But yeah, certainly. Thank you very much, Rob. I appreciate it. I'd only get up this early on a Saturday morning for you.
No, I heard you say that. Okay, one prediction. Who's going to win the series between the Canucks and my Blackhawks?
Your Blackhawks. I could tell you a story about the Blackhawks too, but actually, no. I think the Canucks, the Knuckleheads are doing pretty good. I think they're doing great. They just they pulled it out of the hat with LA, and great game.
Well, before I let you go, how's the real estate business?
It's exciting. It's moving along. Where listings are hitting all-time records right now. I think it's in the Fraser Valley board, it's up 46%. And with the incoming HST and that type of thing, I don't know what it is, but people are just saying, hey, let's downsize, let's upgrade, whatever. It's great.
Now have you got a website that anybody that's considering listing or or buying a home, I would say, hey, give my friend Dan a call. Where can they contact you?
Yeah, certainly. They can go on to www.langleyhomes.org. Good website. I enjoy it, and we feature all our homes for sale there. Got a nice horse property out in Campbell Valley right now that somebody could enjoy.
Well, how many motorcycles can you park on a horse property?
Oh, yeah, a lot. Yeah, we could have a rally out there.
Dan, thank you very much. That's Dan Vanderhoek. I've known Dan for many, many years, and very exciting individual when it comes to the real estate business. But I want to say again, thank you for taking time out to talk about that first motorcycle experience, and we really appreciate it. So Dan, have a wonderful weekend. Good luck to the Canucks. This is Cruise Control on AM 650, Vancouver's motorcycle radio show.